When it comes to sound and audio, we have arguably spent the last 200 years chasing fidelity and perfection. We had wax cylinders, we had vinyl records made of crushed beetles, we had tapes, we had cassette tapes, and then we had CDs, and now we live in an age where we can just shoot lossless audio directly to our ears from anywhere in the world. But we don't actually like perfection, do we? Our brains want slight imperfections. We've evolved in a world full of natural sounds and the weirdness that comes with them. Analog satisfies this by always being a little bit wonky in just the best and most glorious way, whereas digital, we get it perfect. Finally, we did it. And then we immediately try and detune it and distort it and get it crunchy and juicy again. So here we are then with the Chase Bliss Warped Vinyl, a digital box with an all-analog signal path aimed at reintroducing some of that glorious analog wonk. As with pretty much every Chase Bliss pedal I think I've talked about on this channel, it is very simple and yet extremely complicated. The actual interface on the top is pretty basic. We've got a tone control, which does pretty much what you would expect it to do. It's kind of a brightness type thing. We've got volume, which self-explanatory, I think, by this point. Mix, which is your wet-dry control there for your kind of affected wonky signal. RPM, which is on other modulation pedals would be a rate knob, like if you had a chorus or a vibrato, it would be a rate knob there, but we're obviously on a vinyl theme, so we've got RPM. Depth, the depth of your modulation, and warp. This whole little kind of section here is boxed off. Here is called the modu shape section, and effectively you've got your depth and you've got your warp. Warp being actually, as the name of the pedal would kind of suggest, introducing some of that stuff you would get out of a warped vinyl, where they don't warp in a perfectly linear kind of fashion in terms of your modulation, right? If you imagine like a sine wave, you're not getting a sine wave out of a warped, that kind of like warped bendy signal. You're getting kind of quite often, you'll get kind of a slow and then a sharp ramp, and a slow and then a sharp ramp as the vinyl spins on the deck, and that's pretty much what that does there. It's how quickly things will ramp up. It's really cool, and we'll demo that in a second. And you've got switches down here which can control the up and down shape of your kind of like your LFO wave, I suppose, your modulation wave. Really cool. Got a MIDI switch here for changing your MIDI channel. You've got expression or CV input there, so if you want to use it with synthesizers, you can do a bit of that. And then you've got your usual in and out. You've got a bypass switch here. You've got a tap tempo there, and your usual kind of Chase Bliss setup in this form factor. You've got two presets available on either side, and then what you see is what you get in the middle, which I really like. By the way, that's a really effective way of doing that. If you want to save a preset, I think you just hold these two things. And then on the back here, you get all of that wonderful Chase Blissy goodness with all of your wonderful dip switches back there, which we will talk about momentarily in a little minute. That's enough blabbing though. I reckon we get the guitars out. Guitar of choice today is actually a new one, well, new to me at least anyway. It's a Edwards Les Paul Custom. Bring in the warp vinyl now. Really lovely stuff. Starting off with a solid chorus sound there. We'll do the tone knob first, I think. Let's just bring that all the way up, see how much we brighten things up. So sounding pretty subtle here in the room at least, but a nice way of just taming that top end a little bit there. Volume I think I will leave at noon, but we will bring the mix up. It's important before we touch the mix actually, just to give a very brief reminder of how effects like chorus and vibrato and all of those wonderful things work. You get your dry signal, which will go straight through, and then you get the signal that actually gets processed. You get your modulated signal, and it's by combining those two that you get sounds like chorus. if you just have the modulated signal, you get vibrato. So what I'm expecting to happen here is that where we have the mix halfway up at noon, we're getting that kind of lovely chorus sound that we would expect to have, because we have our straight up dry signal and we have our lovely modulated warbly signal going on. But the more I bring this mix up, we're going to hear that chorus effect kind of start to disappear, and we're going to get a lot more of a straight up vibrato. Yeah, lovely stuff there. So as expected, we've now got that really strong warble going. What we can do now that we're here is, well, I can show you the RPM knob first, so it's pretty straight up. You can actually see that really handy readout just on the top of the pedal there, just showing me how much wobble I'm getting. Really, really lovely stuff. If I want to make that modulation deeper, as in more effective, that I can certainly do that. What I am going to do is I'm just going to bring that RPM down a bit so we get a nice slow. I'm going to bring the depth up a little bit just to kind of exaggerate the effect. And what we can do now is we can start manipulating this warp knob, and I can show you how it changes that ramp. So hopefully you can hear a little bit of it there. If I bring it all the way up, you can hear it's kind of fast on the way in and slow on the way out. And then I can control the shape of that warp by changing, especially if I put on a square wave. If I have a square wave on the way in and on the way out, then my kind of nice smooth modulated wave is now just chonky. If I bring the depth all the way up, so especially on those lower settings there, I think it's worth pointing out that that's actually a pretty usable sound. Even when you've got your depth and your warp all the way up, that's quite a usable as an effect, you know. But especially with like a tap tempo. Really, really cool stuff. I'm reminded of the Fairfield circuitry Shallow Waters, which I absolutely loved, although the warp vinyl does seem to be a more versatile unit, and especially with those dip switches on the back, the warp vinyl, and in fact all Chase Bliss pedals, really do have a whole Swiss Army knife of extra fun and games on top. The next thing we need to take a look at is the ramp functions, and to take a look at the ramp functions we need to venture into the world of these dip switches on the back. I will do a close-up of these in a minute just so you can kind of properly see them, but what we've got here, and I'll splash that up on screen now, is expression and ramp parameters on the left-hand side, where we can see volume, mix, RPM, depth, and warp, and all of these can be modulated using the tone knob, which becomes a ramp knob when you flip one of these dip switches up. I have the bounce option switched up here, and what that's going to do is bounce things up and down. Instead of just ramping upwards, it's going to ramp up and ramp down. That's what the bounce option does. So if I say I wanted to modulate the depth, I would, with my non-existent nails, flip up the depth dip switch, there, and then what I would do is now this tone knob has become a ramp knob, so I can have that up like that. I can take the pedal out of bypass, and hopefully if all has gone well, I'll just put these back to fairly sensible settings. Hopefully if all has gone well, I should be able I can hear that depth really taking effect there, whereas now if I bring the ramp knob down, I'm getting less of it. So what if I instead wanted to modulate the rates, the RPM as it's called on our warped vinyl here. That's going to bring that RPM up and down with the rate knob. So you can really hear it coming in and out there. It sounds especially aggressive because I've left it on that square wave there, so we can really hear it coming in and out. I'm just going to pop that onto something a little bit more sensible so we can get some nice pretty noises out of it. So yeah, that's what your ramp knob does effectively, and you can use that to modulate all sorts of different things. You can do, as I said, I think at the beginning, you can do volume as well, which is a really cool little trick actually with this pedal, because if you flick the volume ramp up and the mix all the way down, so I can start to get some tremolo effects out of it, which is super cool. Next, I think we will venture into the world of this lo-fi switch here, which just makes everything sound absolutely glorious. To be honest with you, it's a little bit like the difference between, I always say, when people ask me what it does, like when we have people come in and stuff, I always say it's a bit like switching your kind of 70s, 80s vinyl player out for a 50s vinyl player. It does this really fantastic thing. We'll do a couple of strums on the guitar, but I really want to show you this on like synth and stuff. stuff. Let's get some synths out. So what I've got now is I've got Arturia's OBXA set up. It's going out of my interface through the warp vinyl and back into my interface. So we've got the warp vinyl switch off. Let's just hear what we've got going so far. Really cool stuff. You can hear immediately, especially with that lo-fi mode, lots of the top end gets taken off, lots of kind of low end sort of roll off, a lovely kind of, it still manages to stay not particularly mid heavy, which I really like. You know, when you kind of start scooping out top end and low end, things start to just, through virtue of what's missing, sound a bit honky. That doesn't happen here. Everything still sounds really lovely and really smooth. It just takes on this lovely kind of aged quality. I did play around with the Modu shape section there, just to get some more kind of extreme audible stuff out of it. Really fantastic stuff. A great tool if you're using soft synths especially, and you really want kind of some of that vintage vibe and charm. You know, I've been watching Stranger Things back recently with my stepson for the first time, and it's the first time I've watched it since I got into synth and synthesis and all that sort of stuff, and I'm really struck by just how fantastic some of the sounds in that score are, and just how many classic synth sounds they've managed to kind of squeeze in, you know, to these episodes. It's really cool stuff. Let's have a listen. I do have one last thing. I wrote something on piano that I actually really like, so we're going to run that through it because I think it's going to sound really old and vibey and awesome, and then we will close out. We're going to start once again with the warp vinyl switched off, so you can get a kind of ear for the piano sound. If you're wondering what the piano sound is, I'm not allowed to tell you, it's a secret. It's one of my plugins that is coming up, hopefully very soon as possible. I did a whole video on that, so if you aren't caught up with what's going on with the plugins and stuff, I'll link it in the description, or you can go and find it in the history on the channel. But yeah, that's what the piano sound is. Super excited. Anyway, let's have a listen back through the warp vinyl. Loads of really wonderful things going on in there. The Chase Bliss Warp Vinyl then sounds phenomenal, is extremely flexible, is very compact, so you can go, you know, wherever you want to put it on your board or in the studio, it's probably going to fit. It's easy to power along the same vein. If you are looking for a chorus or vibrato pedal with some extra bits and bobs on top, then this is a fantastic port of call. If you are just looking though for those extra bits on top, maybe have a look at the Fairfield Shallow Waters, because that thing is just magic. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for checking out the channel. Let me know what you thought of the Warp Vinyl down below in the comments. Get chatty there. If you want to get even chattier, Nevermore has a forum, so get over there, get chatty. You can chat with loads of like-minded people. You can share your music. You can tell us what you're up to in terms of new gear or old gear or tips and tricks with the gear that you've got. We would love to know. You can talk tubes, all sorts of stuff. Everything from transistors to tubes and amplifiers to pedals to synths to modular to drums and bass and all sorts of glorious and wonderful crap. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I really, really do appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, and all of that YouTubey nonsense, and I will see you in the next one.